Mr. CY, HM CY. You know, in 1980s, in the Indian Express had carried on a campaign against Antule. And Antule and Datta Samant joined together and they shut down the Express. And if Antule, he was the chief minister, and Datta Samant was a person of physical means of handling, the people were not willing to come to the office. The journalists were afraid. Even the guards were afraid of coming to the office. So in that situation, we decided to file a writ petition, and then we decided to close down the paper, and the government refused to give permission under section 28(o) of the Industrial Disputes Act. So we filed a writ petition where we said that there are reasonable restrictions for the right to freedom of expression, but for the right to silence, there is no restriction. Right to silence is absolute under the Constitution. This is what CY was to argue. So when I went to brief him, he said, I know everything. You have said this in page 21, this in 29, this in 48, this in 62. The briefing was over in 2 minutes. So I told him, sir, I want to sit with you for some time. And you have closed the whole thing in 5 minutes. What do you want to ask? You can ask. Sir, can you tell me something about Golaknath case and Keshavananda case? I had Golaknath knocked out. I said, yes. Sir, I am a student of law. I have read your constitution books. And I am fairly familiar with how the constitutional amendments moved in 1971 onwards. Can I ask you a question? Sir, previously, the unamendability of the Constitution was limited to Part 3 of the Constitution. And that is what you fought against. That you cannot say fundamental rights cannot be amended. That was the case of the government. But you have ended up with a judgment which has extended the unamendability to the whole of the Constitution. He said, yes. This is an extreme reaction. Golaknath was a reaction. This is an extreme reaction to Golaknath. This is what we have to understand when we are talking about Keshavananda case. The political system and the judicial system, when they lose mutual trust, what happens? The political masters, the political sovereign always wants to control everything. The simple point I will mention to you, when Surya Prakash is here, he only brought it out. When the first amendment was proposed to Article 19(1)(a), the idea was Jawaharlal Nehru wanted the restrictions without the word reasonable. But all the people sat together and said, no, it's not correct. Even though you are Jawaharlal, we advise you that the restriction should be reasonable. So there was an internal mechanism in the political sovereign's mind which made the word reasonable restriction possible in the legislation. This was lost when Mrs. Gandhi came. You know what happened? Bank nationalization, and then Privy Purse case, and then the conflict between the judiciary and the executive started. And Keshavananda was one of the, Golaknath case was one of the principal drive of this. And it is true that it was a too tightly worded judgment for anyone to be comfortable with it, though it was a very well written judgment. Not that all judgments well written are good judgments. And so that went into the reaction. Now we do not know which part of the Constitution and the Honorable Chief Justice Mr. Deepak Mishra listed the things which the constitutional makers did not see as the unamendable part of the Constitution. For example, it is now mentioned about the federal structure. Can India not think of tomorrow a presidential form of government? Let's assume the Constitution works for the presidential form of government. Can the Supreme Court strike it down saying that it violates the rule of the basic structure of federal structure? You know, I think there is lack of balance. And my view is a dissenting view. Any dissenting view is an appeal to the future and brooding conscience of judiciary. This may appeal. So let us not think that the basic structure theory is so well founded. From a concrete position of unamendability of Part 3 of the Constitution, We have gone to an abstract position of unamendability of any part of the Constitution. And if the Supreme Court decides that this is the basic structure, who is to question it? For example, the NJAC case, it could well have been read down that you cannot override the two members of the judicial system, and we read it down. It's not possible. The matter would have been solved. But the question of reading it down would not have given the judiciary the position that it wants, namely that it wants independence from the government. That is also not correct. In fact, I had a discussion with the Reserve Bank Governor, Y.V. Reddy. He told me that we should be independent, but there is also some interdependence. That is how the system works. And I think that we are now 50 years after this judgment was pronounced, and there has been, as the Honorable Chief Justice said, that there has been enough empirical evidence to understand this. And I think my appeal is that the framers of the original Constitution had kept one thing in mind, that the fundamental rights of the people should not be affected, whatever is the system of governance. Now, the basic structure theory brings about a situation where the judiciary will decide the system of governance also. It is not the intention of the original framers of the Constitution. It may work for some time, but a very powerful sovereign coming, and powerful sovereign can be produced by democracy. It's not that powerful sovereign will be produced by any method other than democracy in India. Such a person may take a position. Again, a confrontation can come between the judiciary and the legislature. I think it would be within my rights as a citizen to appeal to the judicial fraternity and also the entire intellectual basis of judicial functioning, law, courts, that we should have a re-look at the basic structure theory. And with that, I finally want to say only one thing. I have been seeing what's happening in the last 40 years. The state of the court, the state of the bar, the state of the media, the state of the discourse. Now Ram is not there. We see a dwarfing. All tall people, when they disappear, we don't see an equivalent person on the horizon. We need tall people, sun-crowned, and they cannot come. If they are going to discuss only about their fee structure for cases and the turnover that they achieve in a month or in a year, we have to move away from all. At least some people have to move away from all this. Tall people cannot be produced by mere money making. In fact, tall people are those who keep away from this. So we need to pray for, as the American senator did when the Watergate case was going on. He said we need tall people, sun-crowned, who live above the fog of, I forget the full poem, it's a beautiful poem. And with a drop in his eyes, he closed, saying that no system will work unless there are tall people. We have to produce tall people. Thank you very much.